you know, make sure we have time for lunch.
Gotta have lunch.
Yeah.
We have the same lunch every day that we write. We eat the same thing as a rule. It's quite ritualistic. We no longer stop writing to eat.
Oh,
now we eat as we write. We used to a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Not anymore. Because we've become much more efficient, you know. We don't eat the same thing every series, but like each series we like pick a lunch and then that's it for the series. I wish I were kidding, but it's possible that's the most important thing for us.
The least amount of time we can use thinking about lunch, but still fill our bellies.
It's like, I'll have a lunch. What would you like for lunch? Lunch.
In the case of the Stephen Hawking movie, Theory of Everything, which was based on a biography by his ex-wife Jane Hawking. This, about halfway through Jane's book, there was sort of revelations of a very intimate nature about the way they ran their marriage. And that was the eureka moment. I knew then we had enough ingredients to make a really interesting movie on an intellectual level and also on an emotional level. I was subsequently asked to do a movie on Albert Einstein, and a book by Isaacson arrived, a huge monster of a book. And I thought, well, this will be excuse the pun, a no-brainer. And started reading this great life, and I couldn't see the movie in it, which taught me an interesting thing, that a great life doesn't necessarily make a great movie. And you would think that they would have to, right? But I couldn't see that. I couldn't see the shape of a movie in there.
When I first started writing, I read every how-to book that exists from 1,000,001 different screenplay gurus, and the bit of advice that consistently came up was to write what you know. What I found more useful and what I found to be something that has really, really helped me is to not write what I know, but to use what I know. By that I mean to use your experiences, both positive and negative, and channel them into what you're writing, or even what you're fronting, particularly in the world of factual. That way, a level of authenticity, I think, comes out, because you're drawing from your own personal experiences as opposed to sort of imagining what it would feel like to X.
If you're writing an episode, then it's like colouring in a great way. You just have to demonstrate that you are the best colour inner they've ever had, and you've got quite clear parameters, and it's just a great place to learn skills, and I loved writing episodes.
Yeah, somebody once said that a story is like put person up tree, throw stones at person, bring person down tree, which is one of the simplest ways of talking about story. And so we just bashed a lot of ideas around. Really, they're great. That first couple of weeks is just ideas and trying to make each other laugh and trying to make each other feel emotional, you know, as well as that as well. You know, the Aunt Lucy thing came from that. Was like, what if all he wants to do is get his Aunt Lucy a present, and it sort of unfolds a bit like The Big Lebowski. It's sort of, the dude just wants to get his rug back, and all this chaos, and he goes on this, you know, amazing journey, you know, of discovery. And so we throw ideas around, then we sort of try and solidify it into a treatment, I suppose, or a beat sheet. Put cards on the wall, and then we talk through the ideas with the producer, you know, David Heyman and Rosie. And eventually we get closer and closer to the actual story. So I think we did the treatment in about 6 weeks, did a horrendous first draft in a sort of month or two, and then spent the rest of the time sort of honing that and making it better and rewriting. Writing is rewriting, is another thing a very wise person said. Probably Shakespeare.
So in the case of Bohemian Rhapsody, the struggle with that was to find an antagonist. Here's a young guy, Indian Parsi, born, raised in Zanzibar, ends up in Feltham, a big dreamer, big buck teeth, not an especially great voice. The battle had to be with himself, and that was the realization that the antagonist, the force of opposition, the obstacle in Freddie's life was himself. And that unlocked that whole movie.
Yeah, and you've got to have what Sharon calls the chug-a-lug. You always say that. No, I mean, but you've got to have the, I mean, like, anybody can be funny, but kind of that's just the first step, you know? You have to be like, for example, yesterday, because we're in the middle of writing right now, we had a challenging day, and it took a while to just like, it's almost like we had to like hack through some like weeds to get to something fun, you know? And we really had to just keep on pushing. So you've got to have stamina as a writer. You have to be like, great, when your first draft is rubbish, because then you are just gonna build on it. If you don't have like the rubbish start, then you can't, you know, continue and get better. So gumption, or as Sharon says, chug-a-lug.
Yeah, I don't say that. Yeah, you need a cheerleader, I suppose. Like yesterday, I got into a bit of a depressive hole.
Yeah.
The first 2 hours. And you were very good at sort of pointing out all the positives and what was good about it and why we didn't have to worry. And then
later in the day, as I began to digest my lunch, you had to put me on your shoulder, and I was like, I don't know if that's funny. I don't know if that's interesting. And you're like, it is. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You know, there comes a point where you have to start organizing your material, but it's just the way I've always been, even before I discovered writing. You can hear you know a good story or something emotional or something funny when you hear it. So that is a sort of automatic sorting process in my mind. And then I hate to credit my law degree and my background as a solicitor with anything, but it was quite handy because there was so much material to get through. And it was like, it felt like a bit of investigative journalism at times as well. So there was never the sense of, oh, I'm getting lost in the research, because this program wouldn't have had anything to offer if I hadn't like gone that deep into it.
I think one of the biggest challenges I faced, and probably everyone faces in this business, is rejection. It seems to be an industry built on rejection. You have to keep working, keep knocking on doors, and be insanely determined. Somehow, suffer the slings and arrows and put those behind you and keep faith in yourself. And it's great to have people around you as well. And do everything, say yes to everything. You can take what seems to be quite a small amount of ability and giftedness and turn it into something really interesting if you place upon yourself sustained creative pressure to go beyond what you think you can do.
For me, the writing process is, there's an awful lot of mystique about it, which isn't really true, like a lot of things. There's also a vested interest in maintaining the idea of a mystique to keep people away from it. Obviously, it depends on the topic, on the project. Usually involves quite a lot of research, which I really enjoy. I'm researching something at the moment, and I'm really loving combing through archives and buying lots of books. In fact, the Water Scissors just down the road has done very well out of me. And then it's just about sort of shaping the story. I mean, you always, if this doesn't sound too pretentious, they always say that Michelangelo, I'm not comparing myself to Michelangelo, used to see a block of marble and he could see the sculpture and he just had to get it out of there. And in a way, it's like that. You can sometimes have a massive story and you can be very particular about the story you think you're going to tell, and then you discover in the end it's much simpler, or it's actually just about one person's take or the story of two people, that sort of thing.
Which you sort of write the script, especially if you're a performer, you sort of say the lines in your head or to the other person, you make them laugh, but you're not playing that part, usually. So someone else comes along and they've got a different voice and they've got a different way of being funny. And so you have to adapt to that. Ideally, you've got the story right and the structure. That's really the main thing. And actually the jokes, some jokes you think are amazing, and when the actor says them, it just doesn't work. And sometimes, though, they'll make a really boring line really funny. So it's nice to be able to adapt and build around that. So rehearsal time is key. I mean, a lot of films don't really have rehearsal. But I think it's essential, especially for comedy. So for example, Hugh Grant, who came in and brought so much to that part, but we we really had to write a lot of that on the hoof, you know, especially in his little room with his mannequins, and there was characters that Hugh liked and that he wanted to do, and so we were trying to think of material there, and then he would improvise some stuff, and so sometimes you take the bit of improvising and then you tweak it and turn it into it can be a kernel of a joke, and then you turn it into you craft it, as the writers do, into an even more brilliant joke than their improvisation. Or you just plain steal their improvisation. But you do have to adapt and just change, and actually the more you can do that, the better your script will be, in my experience.
And I don't think we sort of overthink our first drafts. I don't think we don't sort of, beat ourselves up about them. We just kind of get stuff down. I think that's how I've kind of changed a bit as a writer over the years. I used to, write a page of something, and if it was terrible, I'd just feel awful and delete it. And now we just keep it all in there.
Well, we don't really, in the beginning, we did that more. Now, the character of Sharon Morris is a very interesting person. Sharon Horgan, not much there. So we exhausted it, wouldn't you say? At least in your case? No, with me as well. So now, I remember being in episode 3 or series 3 feeling really kind of free, because it was more of a created out of whole cloth thing.
Yeah, it's all just pretty much from the characters now, but with a few kind of, a few little bits and pieces thrown in there. I used to sort of sneak people's stories in, or, family sort of stories in, and now I sort of ask or tell people. If there's something in that's vaguely reminiscent of something someone's told me, or, I just kind of tell them.
Yeah, that's one of the more important balances that we have to strike.
It seems to be the thing that's the easiest, though, right? The funny always kind of finds us. Oh, that's what you were telling me yesterday.
I know.
But it's more about the story feeling satisfying and the narrative working over the series, and that's the kind of thing we worry about more than the drama sort of comedy balance, because that always just seems to happen. And the odd time there's a scene that doesn't have comedy in it. It rarely happens, but we'll know that it's happened for a reason, and
Oh, and then, of course, try to do it in a way where you're not hitting the audience over the head, but rather you're caressing them on the cheek.
The stuff I've always enjoyed writing, and I enjoy as a viewer or as a consumer, is stuff that has all kinds of shades of grey in it. So apart from 50 Shades of Grey, I think that there's a false division between drama and comedy. Obviously, if you're writing something which is 3.5 jokes a second, then or a sitcom. But even so, I think my favourite sitcoms are the ones that actually have a sort of bleak edge to them, and that's because they feel that's why you laugh at these people, really, because they're very real. The characters in Rising Damp or Porridge, Faulty Towers. Then it's all one great shriek of despair, really, and that's why it's so terribly funny. So I would never think, oh, right, I'm doing a drama now, that means there can't be any jokes, or I'm doing a comedy now, there can't be any moments of pathos. That was the whole feel of The League of Gentlemen, was always kind of a massive range of stuff, from very broad sort of slapstick to really quite sad melancholy, because that's what life's like, and that's what we enjoy doing.
Well, you need some talent, and that's hard to teach. You need tenacity. You need to keep going, and then you need some luck, because you can be the greatest writer in the world, and if you don't get that one or lucky break, and that goes back to tenacity. Keep going. The luck will come around if you just give it enough time. Luckily, Amy and I had nothing to fall back on.
No
teach,
transferable skills whatsoever.
We have no college educations.
Literally, it was this
lousy waiter, lousy waitress,
or 10 cents a dance. That's it. That was my life. My only
and me, I was nickel at dance.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
she was actually.
Well, I'm a slightly better dancer than you are.
Sure.
My whole thing is I only say you just literally can't be afraid to be fired. That's it, because it's because I think that fear. TV film is a fear-driven. We're fear biters, and people make terrible mistakes in the fear of being fired. And it's better to be fired than to compromise on something that is going to destroy what you had in the first place. Because nobody's going to remember that you took a note because of fear of firing if it's a failure.
By the way, you're fired.
My advice to any sort of would-be screenwriter is to write a script, just to do it. Do your 100-page script. Get to the end. A lot of people give up halfway through because it's just they feel sick of themselves and the material and the story. Just get to the end, and you'll look back and you'll learn so much.
Steve Moffat always says that the true pressure comes if you have a failure, and that's not very nice. So there's certainly not a pressure in terms of having this global, worldwide phenomenon, because that's what it is. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. All of us have had separate successes, but Sherlock's just one of those things. It's just, everything just clicked, the timing and the casting and the writing, just one of those things. And you just have to go, well, there we are. And if you could bottle it, you would do it again, but you can't manufacture these things. It's certainly not a pressure in that way, and certainly not in terms of fan expectation, because the truth is, we have an extraordinary, active, vocal fan base, but the people who just tune in every 2 years on January the 1st are people who just go, oh, Sherlock's back on, and they like it or they don't, and that's the truth. So you can't let that into your head, because it'll start to, it starts to actually change the course of what you're trying to do, and we're really just still making it for ourselves.